Elara Vance meticulously arranged the last stack of historical documents on the climate-controlled shelf. The cool, dry air of the municipal archives was her sanctuary, each neatly catalogued file a testament to order and clarity. In a world often messy and unpredictable, Elara found solace in the tangible facts of the past, in the clear lines of historical record. At 29, her life was a carefully curated collection of predictable routines. Morning coffee brewed precisely. Work tasks completed with unwavering precision. Evenings spent with vintage novels or intricate puzzles. There were no grand dramas, no sudden upheavals. She preferred it that way. Her own family, though loving, often felt like a minor disarray she had to navigate. Her mother, bless her heart, was perpetually optimistic but perpetually late. Her father, a kind man, possessed a charming absent-mindedness. Elara, the eldest, often felt like the unspoken anchor, the one who remembered birthdays, paid bills on time, and kept the collective household afloat. She knew her lineage back 3 generations, a line of solid, unremarkable, well-meaning people, no hidden secrets, no shocking revelations. Just quiet, dependable Vances. The digital chime of her personal email jolted her from her methodical focus. An unfamiliar sender, Blackwood Legal Services, appeared in her inbox. Elara, cautious by nature, almost deleted it as spam. But the subject line, regarding the estate of Elias Thorne, piqued her professional curiosity. No one in her family had the surname Thorne. It had to be a mistake. She clicked it open. The letter was formal, concise, and utterly bewildering. It stated, in stark legal language, that due to the recent passing of Mr. Elias Thorne, and following extensive genealogical research, Vance had been identified as the sole living heir to his considerable estate. A meeting was requested at their offices the following Tuesday to discuss the execution of the will and the transfer of assets. Elara, reread the email 3 times. Sole living heir. Considerable estate. Elias Thorne. Tay name meant nothing. She had no great-uncles, no distant cousins named Thorne. Family tree, though not sprawling, certainly not incomplete enough to harbor an entire branch she was unaware of. She immediately called her Aunt Vivian, her mother's sister, the family's unofficial historian and chief gossip. Vivian, a woman whose voice could fill a room even through a phone line, answered on the second ring. Elara, darling, to what do I owe this pleasure? Not calling about that lovely antique vase you broke last Christmas, are we? Vivian chirped, her voice already hinting at a scandal she'd love to uncover. Aunt Vivian, Elara began, trying to keep her voice steady. Do you know anyone named Elias Thorne? In our family history. A distant relative, perhaps. A pause. A rare moment of silence from Aunt Vivian. Then a thoughtful hum. Thorne, doesn't ring a bell, dear. Are you sure you've got the right family? We're Vances and Masons on. Your mother's side and your father's side is all good old Davises from upstate. No Thornes anywhere, not in my memory. Her voice dropped conspiratorially. Why? Is this some long-lost rich relative trying to pop up? I'd kill for one of those. Laura sighed, rubbing her temples. It's a law firm. They say I'm the sole heir to his estate. He apparently just passed away. Another longer silence. Then a sharp intake of breath from Vivian. Well, I'll be Elias Thorne, you say? Now that you mention it, there was this old story. A whisper, really. My grandmother, your great-grandmother, used to mention a cousin, or something, who ran off years ago. A bit of a black sheep, they said. Brilliant, but eccentric. Always tinkering with strange inventions. Moved away, completely cut ties, Thorne. Yes, I think that might have been the name, but it was dismissed as a wild tale. No one ever talked about him after that. A complete mystery. A black sheep. An eccentric inventor. A complete mystery. The words were like tiny fissures appearing in the meticulously smooth surface of Elara's ordered life. Her family, so predictable, so devoid of secrets, suddenly seemed to harbor a hidden chapter, one that now directly involved her. Elara ended the call. The formal email still open on her screen. The cool air of the archives, once a comfort, now felt strangely chilling. A sense of unease, unfamiliar and unwelcome, began to settle in her stomach. Her life, once so neatly bound, felt like a book whose spine had just cracked, threatening to spill unknown pages into her quiet world. The mystery of Elias Thorne, a name she'd never heard until now, was about to become the most disruptive force in her meticulously planned existence. The following Tuesday, Elara found herself sitting in the austere waiting room of Blackwood Legal Services. The firm's offices were nestled in a sleek, modern skyscraper downtown. A stark contrast to the historical dust she usually breathed. Every surface gleamed, every whispered conversation felt amplified by the quiet efficiency of the place. Elara clutched her handbag, her usual composure somewhat frayed by the burgeoning mystery. Aunt Vivian had offered to come, eager for any morsel of gossip. But Elara had politely declined, preferring to face this bewildering new chapter alone. A severe-looking receptionist, whose smile seemed surgically affixed, eventually called her name. Elara was led down a minimalist hallway to a large glass-walled office. Behind a massive mahogany desk sat Mr. Blackwood 60s, the man who had sent the perplexing email. He was a picture of refined gravity, his silver hair neatly parted, his dark suit perfectly tailored. His gaze was sharp, dissecting. Ms. Vance, Mr. Blackwood greeted, his voice smooth and devoid of any warmth. He gestured to a plush leather chair opposite him. Thank you for coming. I understand this may be a surprise. A surprise is an understatement. Mr. Blackwood, Elara replied, settling into the chair. I've never heard of an Elias Thorne. My family has no record of him. Mr. Blackwood steepled his fingers, his expression unreadable. Indeed, Mr. Thorne was a private individual, highly reclusive in his later years. Our firm handled his affairs for decades, strictly by his instructions. He meticulously planned for this eventuality. He slid a thick file across the desk. As per the last will and testament of Elias Thorne, executed 5 years ago, the entirety of his estate, both real and intellectual property, is bequeathed to Elara Vance, his sole surviving direct descendant through the maternal line. Research was exhaustive. Elara's brows furrowed. Maternal line. Who was his mother? And how does that connect to my family? Mr. Blackwood opened the file, revealing dense legal documents and a genealogical chart. Elias Thorne's mother was Isabella Thorne. Born Isabella Vance. She was the younger sister of your great-grandfather, Thomas Vance. Isabella and Thomas had a significant falling out in the early 20th century. A bitter dispute over family matters and differing visions for a particular venture. Isabella subsequently married a Mr. Thorne and severed all ties with the Vance family, taking the Thorne name. Elias was her only child. Elara's mind raced. Isabella Vance, her great-aunt, perhaps? The black sheep aunt, Vivian vaguely recalled. A family dispute, an old name, a vanished relative. It all began to piece together, albeit dimly. So, my great-grandfather, Thomas Vance, was Elias Thorne's uncle, Elara clarified, trying to absorb the convoluted family tree. Precisely. Mr. Blackwood confirmed. And you, Ms. Vance, are the closest living relative by blood, given the specifics of the will. Elias Thorne had no spouse, no children. He wanted his legacy to return to the bloodline he felt had unjustly disavowed. His mother. Legacy? Elara asked, a prickle of dread joining her confusion. What exactly does this estate entail? Mr. Blackwood removed a set of tarnished brass keys from the file and placed them on the desk. Mr. Thorne was an inventor, a visionary. Some might say, others might say, obsessive. His estate comprises primarily of his residence and workshop, located in the outskirts of Oakhaven. It is a substantial property, though, not in pristine condition, okay? And within it is the entirety of his life's work. Patents, prototypes, research, notes. He was convinced his work would change the world. He then produced a black and white photograph. It showed a sprawling Gothic revival mansion, its turrets reaching towards a dark, cloudy sky. Ivy clawed its way up crumbling stone walls, and broken windows stared out like vacant eyes. The grounds were overgrown, choked with wild growth. It looked less like a home and more like a set piece from a Gothic horror film. Elara stared at the image, cold shiver running down her spine. This was her considerable estate. This wasn't just a house. It was a ruin, a monument to neglect. It's quite large, Elara managed, understatement barely covering her shock. Indeed. Mr. Blackwood replied, his voice still flat. The property, Thornwood Manor, has been uninhabited for over 30 years. Since Mr. Thorne's retirement from public life. He lived a secluded existence within its walls until his passing, uninhabited for 30 years. And what? About his inventions? Elara asked, a new kind of curiosity battling with her initial apprehension. Mr. Blackwood sighed. Rare display of emotion. That, Ms. Vance, is where the challenge lies. Elias Thorne was convinced his inventions were revolutionary, but misunderstood. He kept them locked away, protected by layers of security of his own design. He believed the world was not ready, or that certain powerful entities would steal his ideas. His will stipulates that before you can fully inherit the financial assets, a significant trust fund managed separately, you must first personally enter Thornwood Manor. assess his work, and, if you deem it worthy, bring his true legacy to light. He pushed the keys across the desk. They felt heavy, cold, almost sentient in her hand. These weren't just keys to a house. They were keys to a forgotten life, a century-old grudge, and a potential fortune tied to the eccentric dreams of a man she never knew. Elara looked at the desolate mansion in the photograph, then at the keys in her palm. Her meticulously ordered life had just been delivered a complete, dusty, and potentially dangerous chaos. The clear lines of her past had blurred, replaced by the shadowed, sprawling silhouette of Thornwood Manor, and she knew, with a sudden, unsettling certainty, that the quiet archivist who loved order was about to embark on the most unpredictable journey of her life. The drive to Oakhaven was longer than Elara anticipated, a winding journey that took her from the neat grid of city streets into increasingly sparse forested landscapes. The GPS, usually her unwavering guide, seemed to falter as she approached. Her destination, its signal weakening as if resisting the very notion of leading her to such a place. The closer she got, the more the air seemed to thicken, laden not with dust, but with a palpable sense of abandonment. Thornwood Manor did not disappoint her initial impression from the photograph. It stood at the end of a long, unpaved driveway, choked with weeds and fallen leaves. The iron gates, once grand, hung askew on rusted hinges, half swallowed by thorny bushes. The mansion itself was a grotesque silhouette against the twilight sky, its high gables and myriad chimneys like skeletal fingers reaching towards the heavens. Ivy, thick as a python, coiled around its stone facade, claiming windows and doors like a living shroud. Elara parked her sensible sedan a respectful distance from the looming structure. A cold gust of wind, carrying the scent of damp earth and decaying wood, swept through the clearing, rustling the overgrown branches that scraped against the mansion's walls. There was no welcoming light, no sign of life beyond the persistent rustle of the wind. Just an oppressive silence, broken only by the caw of a distant crow. She stepped out of the car, the keys to Thornwood Manor feeling heavier than ever in her pocket. They seemed to hum with an ancient, forgotten energy. Her archivist's mind, usually so methodical, found itself battling a primal instinct to turn and flee. This wasn't a historical document she could simply categorize and shelve. This was a living, breathing testament to a forgotten past, and it felt distinctly unwelcoming. Taking a deep breath, Elara made her way to the massive oak front door. It was deeply carved, its once polished surface now weathered and dull, stained with years of rain and sun. A heavy brass knocker, shaped like a gargoyle, was verdigris green with age. She hesitated for a moment, her hand hovering over the cold metal. This was it. The threshold to Elias Thorne's world. She selected the largest of the brass keys, its intricate carving hinting at a forgotten locksmith's artistry. With a click, the tumblers within the ancient lock shifted, a surprisingly clean sound in the oppressive silence. She pushed the door. It groaned, protesting loudly as it slowly opened inward, revealing a cavernous, pitch-black interior. The air inside was stale, heavy with the scent of mildew, dust, and something else, something metallic and faint, like old machinery. Lara fumbled for her phone, activating its flashlight. The beam cut through the oppressive darkness, revealing a vast foyer. A grand staircase with a spiral banister dominated the space, its dark wood gleaming faintly in the weak light. Portraits, shrouded in cobwebs, lined the walls, their faces obscured by grime and shadow. Dust sheets covered massive pieces of furniture, giving them the appearance of ghostly figures lurking in the gloom. The silence here was different from outside. It was a deeper, more profound quiet, as if the house itself held its breath. Elara moved further in, her footsteps echoing unnervingly on the marble floor. She felt a chill that had nothing to do with the temperature. This place wasn't just old. It felt watched. Every shadow seemed to hold a secret, every creak of the ancient timbers a whisper from the past. She tried a light switch near the door. Nothing. The power was undoubtedly off. She navigated by flashlight, her beam dancing across dusty canvases, forgotten sculptures, and closed doors. The house was enormous, a labyrinth of potential rooms and untold stories. As she moved towards the base of the grand staircase, her flashlight beam caught something glinting on the lowest step. A single tarnished brass cog, intricately designed, lay on the dust-covered wood. It was small, no bigger than her thumb, but perfectly formed. It looked like a piece of an old clock, or perhaps something more complex. Elara bent down, picking it up. The metal was cold against her skin. It felt out of place, almost deliberately left there. A calling card. First clue from Elias Thorne, the eccentric inventor. Suddenly, a faint scrape came from upstairs, a sound like something being dragged across a wooden floor, or perhaps a heavy book falling. It was subtle, almost imperceptible over the pounding of her own heart. Elara froze, her breath catching in her throat. She spun around, aiming her flashlight beam at the top of the stairs, then sweeping it across the shadowy upper landing. Nothing. Only the dust motes dancing in the beam. Her mind, usually so logical, immediately searched for rational explanations. Wind, a settling house, perhaps a rodent. But the hair on her arms stood on end. This was more than just a dilapidated mansion. This was Thornwood's grim embrace, and it felt as though Elias Thorne, the mysterious inventor, was still very much present within its walls. Watching his unexpected heir take her first tentative steps into his forgotten world. The fleeting sound from upstairs, whether real or imagined, tightened a knot of unease in Elara's stomach. Her archivist's logic wrestled with a primal intuition telling her she was not alone. But the sheer silence that followed, broken only by the rhythmic thumping of her own heart, eventually allowed her rationality to prevail. It was an old house. Its old houses groaned, settled, and played tricks on the mind. Clutching the small brass cog tightly in her palm, Elara decided to start her exploration systematically, just as she would approach a new collection in the archives. The living room, she deduced, was likely off the grand foyer to her left. She aimed her phone's flashlight, its beam a fragile sentinel against the gloom. The living room was vast, filled with dust-shrouded furniture that hinted at former grandeur. A grand piano draped like a sleeping beast, velvet armchairs slumped in exhaustion, and intricate tapestries faded to ghostly images on the walls. The air here was even heavier, thicker with the scent of aged wood and the faint, sweet decay of long-dead flowers. On a massive claw-footed table, hidden beneath a particularly large dust sheet, Elara found a stack of old leather-bound books. Their spines were cracked, their pages brittle. They were not novels or poetry, but scientific texts, advanced physics, mechanical engineering, obscure treatises on theoretical constructs. Elias Thorne, the inventor, was no amateur dabbler. She moved deeper into the house, checking the dining room, a silent, echoing chamber, and the kitchen, a surprisingly modern but equally neglected space with disconnected wires and empty cupboards. It became clear Elias Thorne had lived a life devoid of domestic comforts. Perhaps consumed by his work, her flashlight beam eventually found a narrow, almost hidden door at the very back of the main floor, tucked away behind the service stairs. Unlike the other ornate doors, this one was made of heavy, unvarnished wood, reinforced with iron bands. It looked less like an entrance to a room and more like the door to a vault. This had to be it. The workshop. The keys in her hand seemed to pulse. She found one that matched the heavy, ancient lock. It turned with a resounding click, a sound that reverberated through the silent house. Elara pushed the door open. It swung inward with a low groan, revealing a new kind of darkness. This room was different. The air was colder, crisper, and carried a distinct scent of metal, oil, and something electric, like ozone after a thunderstorm. The darkness here was absolute, deeper than mere absence of light. As if light itself struggled to penetrate, Elara stepped inside, sweeping her flashlight beam around. It was an enormous space, far larger than any typical workshop. It spanned the entire width of the house, with high ceilings and heavy industrial-grade workbenches lining the walls. But it wasn't just a workshop. It was a laboratory, gleaming. Machinery, covered in thin, almost translucent sheets, stood like silent sentinels. Intricate diagrams were pinned to corkboards, equations scrawled on chalkboards, and shelves overflowed with components, wires, gears, lenses, tubes, and strange, unlabeled vials. It was a chaotic symphony of genius and obsession. Her flashlight landed on a central contraption draped in a massive canvas sheet. It was enormous, taking up a significant portion of the room, its shape hinting at complex curves and angles beneath the covering. It hummed faintly, a deep, almost imperceptible vibration that Elara felt more than heard. It was connected by thick cables to what looked like a massive, antiquated power generator in one corner. Her gaze then fell upon a large, sturdy wooden desk in another corner, covered in even more papers, diagrams, and small, intricate tools. This was where Elias Thorne had spent his final, productive years. On the desk, illuminated by her flashlight, sat an open, leather-bound journal. Its pages were filled with Elias Thorne's elegant, slightly spidery handwriting. Elara's archivist instincts kicked in. This was a primary source. This was the key. She approached the desk cautiously, her heart pounding with a mixture of excitement and trepidation. The air around the desk felt charged, as if the ghost of Elias Thorne's brilliant tormented mind still lingered there. She picked up the journal. The first page read, September 14th, 1902. The calculations are sound. The theory holds. They dismissed my mother's vision, ridiculed her brilliance. They called us mad. But soon they will see. Soon the fabric of time itself will yield to my will. The Vance family may have disavowed us, but our true legacy, it transcends their petty ambitions. Elara's eyes widened. The fabric of time. This wasn't about simple mechanics. Elias Thorne was dabbling in something far more profound and, perhaps, far more dangerous. The mention of my mother's vision and the Vance family stirred a deeper, personal connection to this forgotten, brilliant man. Suddenly, the faint hum from the covered machine intensified, growing louder, more erratic. A low guttural growl seemed to emanate from the depths of the room, shaking the very floor beneath her feet. The single brass cog she still held in her hand felt suddenly hot. Vibrating intensely, Elara spun around, aiming her flashlight at the immense covered contraption. The hum was now a throbbing resonance, and the canvas sheet began to subtly, unnervingly shift. Something within it was activating. The archivist and Elara screamed for logic and explanation. But the woman holding a vibrating cog in a dark, abandoned laboratory, with a journal talking about the fabric of time, felt a cold, undeniable terror. Elias Thorne's legacy was not just forgotten, it was awakening. And she was standing right in its path. The low growl emanating from the covered apparatus intensified. The vibration now distinct, resonating through the floorboards and up Elara's very bones. The brass cog in her hand grew warmer, throbbing with a peculiar rhythm that mirrored the machine's awakening. The canvas sheet, once a still shroud, now rippled and billowed as if a phantom wind had suddenly sprung up from within. Elara's archivist mind, trained to categorize and rationalize, struggled to process the impossible. Machinery, long dormant, was coming to life in a dark, abandoned mansion. A single small cog was somehow linked to its activation. And the journal spoke of manipulating the fabric of time. Her carefully constructed world of logic felt like it was fracturing. She stumbled backward, away from the pulsating mass under the sheet, her eyes darting between the menacing shape and the open journal on the desk. Journal. That was the key to understanding. Elias Thorne had left clues, a breadcrumb trail for his unexpected heir. Taking a shaky breath, Lara forced herself to focus. She couldn't run. Not yet. Her innate curiosity, a stronger force than her fear, compelled her to stay. She turned back. To the desk, her flashlight beam trembling slightly as she aimed it at the journal. The hum of the machine was now a deep, resonant thrum, a low, persistent note that filled the vast laboratory. She quickly flipped through the pages, past the initial entry, desperate for answers. Elias Thorne's elegant script filled page after page, interspersed with complex diagrams and calculations that made no sense to her. He wrote of theories, of energy fields, of temporal displacement, and of a concept he termed the Chronos weave. October 2nd, 1902. They laughed at my proposal for the Thorne chronometer, called it a child's fantasy. My uncle, Thomas Vance, was the loudest in his derision. He said my mother, Isabella, was a fool to waste her intellect on such superstitions, and that I was just like her, chasing shadows instead of true innovation. He was so focused on his textile empire, on immediate, tangible profit. He couldn't see the true threads that bind existence. Elara paused, her heart skipping a beat. Thomas Vance, her great-grandfather, the brother of Elias's mother, Isabella. The family dispute wasn't just about inheritance. It was about ideology, about science versus traditional business. And it seemed Thomas Vance had played a significant role in mocking Elias's early work. She read on, her eyes scanning faster, trying to piece together the mad geniuses. Narrative, February 17, 1905. The first successful temporal resonance. Minor? A mere ripple. But it confirms my hypothesis. The chronos weave can be manipulated. I felt it. A faint echo of another time, another possibility. Isabella understood. She saw the potential, the beauty of it. But she feared the power, and the men who would seek to control it. She warned me of the collectors, unseen forces who police the linearity of time. Delusions, I told her, just the stress of the work. Collectors. Elara frowned. This was moving from eccentric science to full-blown paranoia, or perhaps something truly beyond her comprehension. The machine's hum intensified, now accompanied by faint crackling sounds, like static electricity building up. August 9, 1908. Betrayal. Unimaginable betrayal. Thomas Vance. He didn't just dismiss me. He stole my preliminary designs. For profit, not directly. He believed my work was dangerous, an affront to nature. He intended to destroy it, to bury my discoveries. He nearly succeeded. He sent men. They seized my early prototypes, burned my first laboratory. My mother, Isabella, she tried to protect my work. She sacrificed everything. Elara gasped, a sharp, involuntary sound. Her great-grandfather, a respected figure in her family history, a thief and a destroyer. And Isabella, Elias's mother, Eleanor's elder sister, had sacrificed everything to protect this dangerous, time-bending research. A profound sense of cold dread settled in her chest. Oh, this wasn't just a family secret. It was a century-old. War fought over the fabric of reality itself. Suddenly, a blinding flash of light erupted from beneath the canvas sheet. The hum escalated into a piercing whine, and the entire room was bathed in an ethereal, pulsating blue glow. The canvas sheet disintegrated, atomizing into dust. Standing before her, revealed in its terrible, magnificent glory, was a massive, intricate apparatus. It wasn't merely a machine. It was an impossible sculpture of polished brass, spiraling, copper coils, and glowing liquid-filled tubes. Ornate dials and levers adorned its base, some spinning wildly on their own. In its center, a vortex of shimmering blue light pulsed with incredible intensity, swirling like a miniature galaxy. The brass cog in Elara's hand, now almost painfully hot, flew from her grasp, drawn by an invisible force towards the vortex. It floated for a moment, suspended in the shimmering light. 4 snapping into an empty slot on the machine's central console. With a final triumphant clunk, the machine's whine modulated into a steady, powerful hum. The blue vortex stabilized, mesmerizing and terrifying Dot from within the shimmering vortex. A whisper, faint as a breath, yet clear as if spoken directly into her ear, echoed through the lab. It was a voice, old and resonant, filled with a profound sorrow and an ancient determination. Double quotes. Elara ... My descendant. They silenced the truth once. Don't let them silence it again. The weave ... It holds everything ... Destiny ... The very echoes of time. You must protect it. They are coming. The collectors. Lara stumbled backward, falling to the dusty floor. Her mind reeled. This wasn't just an inheritance. This was a direct, impossible message from the past. Elias Thorne's ghost wasn't just lingering. He was speaking to her. And his warning about the collectors chillingly suggested that her carefully ordered life had just been plunged into a war across time, one she knew nothing about, but was now inextricably a part of. The unraveling had truly begun. Elara lay sprawled on the dusty floor, the metallic temps of fear sharp in her mouth. Her mind, usually a fortress of logic and meticulously filed facts, felt assaulted. The glowing vortex in the machine pulsed steadily, casting an eerie blue light that made the shadows dance like tormented spirits. The old voice, Elias Thorne's voice, still echoed in her ears. They are coming. The collectors. She scrambled backward, away from the terrifying apparatus, until her back hit a cold workbench. Her heart hammered against her ribs, a frantic, desperate rhythm. This wasn't a historical document she could analyze, not a mystery she could solve. With diligent research, this was impossible. Time manipulation, hidden legacies, secret societies called collectors. It sounded like something ripped from a pulp fiction novel. Not the sober reality of her existence. Yet the evidence was undeniable. The machine hummed with power. Now firmly embedded in the console, glinted ominously. And the whisper, chillingly real, had come from the very air around her. No, Elara whispered, the word thin and fragile in the vast room. No, this isn't real. It can't be. She forced herself to stand, her legs shaky. Her gaze kept returning to the shimmering blue vortex, hypnotizing and terrifying. What had Elias Thorne done? And what did he expect her to do? Her eyes fell back on the open journal, still lying on the dusty desk. It held the answers, or at least the next piece of the puzzle. With a newfound sense of urgency, she snatched it up, her fingers fumbling through the brittle pages. She needed to understand what the Chronos Weave was, and more importantly, who these collectors were, and why they were coming. She found an entry dated a few weeks after the previous one. Its tone increasingly frantic. September 1st, 1908. The warnings? They were not delusions. Isabella confronted Thomas. He admitted his intent. He spoke of maintaining the natural order, of preventing chaos. He called my work blasphemy. He has connections, power beyond what I imagined for a textile magnate. He believes he is protecting humanity. He is a fool. He does not understand the tapestry he seeks to unravel. Thomas Vance, her great-grandfather. This was a family feud of catastrophic proportions, spanning generations. Elara felt a wave of cold fury. Her family, the respectable, predictable Vances, were part of this elaborate, terrifying deception. She flipped more pages, frantic. Elias's entries became less about scientific discovery and more about survival. About evasion. October 22nd, 1908, they found me. Not Thomas directly, but his agents, the collectors. They move in shadows, silent and efficient. They wear no uniforms, carry no obvious weapons, yet their authority is absolute. They spoke of temporal anomalies and maintaining the prime timeline. They seek to erase any deviation, any ripple in the chronos weave. They called my machine a breach. They are relentless. I barely escaped, thanks to Isabella's cunning. But she paid a price. Elara's breath hitched. Isabella, Elias's mother, her own great-aunt. What price had she paid? Was this the sacrifice Elias mentioned earlier? This wasn't just about money or reputation. Lives were at stake. Her ancestors, caught in a secret war against shadowy timekeepers. It was too much to fathom. November 5th, 1908. Isabella. She created a diversion, a powerful one. It allowed me to escape with the chronometer, but it drew all their attention. I saw her last ... in a blinding flash of light and energy. She saved me. She saved my work. The collectors believe they erased. Her erased all trace of her intervention. But the weave remembers. And I will ensure her sacrifice was not in vain. I will hide my work, let it lie dormant, awaiting the true heir. The one who carries the blood, but not the blindness of the Vances. A single tear traced a path down Elara's cheek. Isabella Vance, her own blood relative, sacrificing herself to protect this incredible, terrifying legacy. And Elias Thorne had hidden it, waiting for someone to find it. Someone like Elara. The blood he spoke of must be her own. A direct link to Isabella's bravery and Elias's genius. Suddenly, a faint, rhythmic beeping sound pierced the silence of the lab. It wasn't coming from the Chronos Weave apparatus. It was coming from somewhere outside the workshop, perhaps deeper within the mansion. It sounded like an alarm, a very subtle, very precise alarm. Elara's head snapped up. The collectors. Were they really coming? Oh. Was this what Elias had warned her about? The idea that these shadowy figures, these time police, could have tracked the Chronos Weave's activation filled her with a new, chilling wave of fear. This wasn't just a family drama anymore. This was a direct threat. She quickly closed the journal, clutching it to her chest. Oh, the silent, abandoned mansion, once a mere curiosity, had become a battleground. Her life, once perfectly ordered, was now tangled in a century-old war for reality itself. Oh. And she, Elara Vance, the meticulous archivist, was now Elias Thorne's unlikely soldier. Standing at the precipice of a temporal conflict she barely understood, but whose echoes were undeniably drawing closer. The persistent beeping, subtle yet undeniably urgent, drilled into Elara's skull. It was a digital intrusion in this analog, dust-choked mansion, a harsh reminder that the world outside and its unseen threats were now knocking at Thornwood's decaying doors. Her logical mind was screaming for an exit strategy, but her every instinct was telling her to find out more. The journal, clutched tightly in her hand, felt like a lifeline. She pushed herself up from the floor, her eyes darting. Between the steadily humming chrono's weave and the direction of the beeping, it seemed to originate from the main hallway near the front entrance, suggesting a sensor or an alarm system Elias Thorne had put in place. "They are coming, ... Lelius's whispered warning echoed again, now imbued with a terrifying immediacy. Elara had two choices: flee, abandoning the house and its bewildering secrets, or investigate, risking confrontation with these mysterious collectors. The archivist in her, the one who craved answers and couldn't leave a collection incomplete, won out. She had to know. She moved stealthily out of the laboratory, her steps light on the dusty floorboards. The blue glow of the chrono's weave cast long, eerie shadows behind her. As she entered the grand foyer, the beeping grew louder, a rapid, insistent pulse. It led her to a small, almost invisible panel recessed into the wall beside the front door. The panel was made of dark, polished wood, blending seamlessly with the wall. It had a single tiny red light that was now flashing frantically in sync with the beeping. Below it, a series of complex antique-looking dials, and a small, tarnished brass keyhole, remarkably similar to the one that had accepted the cog in the chrono's weave. Elara's mind raced. An alarm, activated by the machine, and a lock. A lock designed by Elias Thorne. What if there was a way to disarm it, or at least understand what it meant? She knelt, examining the panel. It was intricate, a testament to Elias's mechanical genius. There was no visible switch to simply turn it off. This required more than just brute force. It required understanding. Suddenly, the beeping changed. It became faster, more urgent, almost a continuous shriek. And then, a new sound, faint but distinct, reached her ears from outside. The distant, almost imperceptible whir of an engine. Not a car, something quieter, more sophisticated. A drone, a stealth vehicle. Her blood ran cold. The collector's panic flared, but Elara forced it down. She thought back to Ilias's journal entry. He sent men. They seized my early prototypes, burned my first laboratory. They spoke of temporal anomalies and maintaining the prime timeline. They seek to erase any deviation, any ripple in the chrono's weave. They weren't just thieves. They were guardians, or perhaps executioners, of time itself. And she had just triggered their alert. Her eyes scanned the panel's dials. They were labeled with obscure symbols, but one stood out. A small, almost microscopic inscription beneath one dial. A tiny TV Thomas Vance, her great-grandfather. This alarm system was connected to him. Had he been working with the collectors, or against them? The thought that her ancestor was actively involved in this shadow war was staggering. The sound of the engine grew steadily louder. accompanied now by a faint, rhythmic chopping sound, like rotor blades. It was definitely an aerial vehicle, and it was getting closer fast. Elara knew she had seconds. She had to choose: disarm the alarm or hide. If she fled, they would find the Chronos Weave, and Elias's legacy would be lost forever. If she stayed, she risked capture, or worse, becoming another erased anomaly in their prime timeline. Her gaze fell upon the small, antique wooden box on a nearby table in the foyer. Not the one from her old house, but another similar one, equally unadorned. It was open slightly, revealing a flash of deep, rich silk within. Elias Thorne must have kept it here. A gut feeling, a sudden desperate flash of intuition urged her towards it. It was illogical, but in this house of impossibilities, logic felt useless. With the ominous chopping of the rotors growing louder, now directly above the manor, Elara lunged for the box. Her fingers brushed against the silk, pulling out not a ribbon, but a beautifully crafted, old-fashioned pocket watch. Its casing was intricately engraved, almost identical to the brass cog that had activated the Chronos Weave. And beneath the watch, a small, rolled-up parchment. The roaring of the rotors intensified, shaking the very foundations of Thornwood Manor. A brilliant, blinding light suddenly pierced through the massive stained glass window above the front door, bathing the foyer in an unnatural, stark white glow. A deep, authoritative voice boomed, muffled by the thick walls, but undeniably clear. Temporal anomaly detected. Thornwood Manor. Initiate containment protocol. Seek and neutralize. Elara stared at the pocket watch in her hand, then at the parchment, then at the blinding light outside. There was no more time for choices. The collectors had arrived, and she was trapped. The blinding white light from above, coupled with the thunderous roar of rotors directly overhead, shattered any remaining illusion of safety. The authoritative voice, cold and disembodied, boomed through the mansion's thick walls. Temporal anomaly detected. Thornwood Manor. Initiate containment protocol. Seek and neutralize. Elara's breath hitched. They weren't just coming. They were here. Her gaze snapped from the invading light to the antique pocket watch still clutched in her hand, then to the small rolled-up parchment beneath it. Instinct, a surge of adrenaline-fueled desperation, screamed at her to act. There was no time to analyze, only to react. With the pocket watch still clutched tightly, she unrolled the parchment. It was a single brittle sheet covered in Elias Thorne's familiar script, but this time etched with frantic, hurried lines. It wasn't a scientific explanation, but a desperate instruction. If you find this, they are here. The watch is the key, not to rewind, but to glimpse. A flicker across the weave, a whisper of what was, what could be. Look through its lens and find the gate, my greatest secret, my final defiance. Before they eradicate the echo. Glimpse through its lens, Elara muttered, her eyes darting to the watch. Its face, beneath the intricate casing, had no hands, only a small, convex crystal lens in the center. The front door, previously opened by Elara, now vibrated violently. A metallic thud echoed through the foyer, Then another, louder one. Someone or something was battering it down. Elara knew she had only seconds. With trembling fingers, she brought the pocket watch to her eye, peering through its lens. The world through the crystal warped, blurring into a kaleidoscope of colors and light. The dust-filled foyer twisted, melted, then solidified into something impossibly familiar, yet hauntingly different. She was still in the foyer, but it was pristine, vibrant, alive. The portraits on the walls were clear, their subjects smiling. The grand piano gleamed, its keys inviting, and standing at the foot of the grand staircase, just where the Chronos weave apparatus was in the lab, was Elias Thorne himself. Younger, vibrant, looking directly at her. He wasn't speaking, but his lips moved, forming words that resonated not through her ears, but directly into her mind, a silent, urgent message. The passage, ... behind the veil. Look for the symbol. Isabella's mark. Then the image flickered, distorted, and the pristine foyer dissolved back into the dusty, decaying reality. The metallic thud at the door grew deafening, followed by a splintering crack. The collectors were in. Elara dropped the watch, her heart pounding. Elias Thorne, a ghostly projection from the past, had spoken to her. Behind the veil, Isabella's mark. What veil? What mark? The words were riddles, and time was running out. Heavy footsteps, swift and precise, echoed through the fractured front door. A blinding searchlight beam cut through the foyer, sweeping across the space. Through the gaping hole where the door had been, two figures emerged. They were clad in sleek, dark, form-fitting suits, their faces obscured by helmets with glowing visors. They moved with an unsettling, synchronized efficiency, like predators on the hunt. These were the collectors. They ignored the dust, the decay. Their glowing visors scanned the room, focusing intently on the area where Elara stood. They were looking for the temporal anomaly, the Chronos weave, and likely, her. Elara instinctively ducked behind a massive, dust-shrouded armchair, pressing herself against its cold velvet. She peered through a tear in the sheet, watching them. They were silent, their movements fluid, their presence radiating an unnerving sense of cold authority. They were not human, not entirely, or at least not conventionally so. One of the collectors raised an arm. From its forearm, a device extended, emitting a low, high-pitched whine, a concentrated beam of energy. Shimmering with a faint blue light, shot across the room, precisely targeting the direction of the hidden workshop. The floorboards there began to glow, then smoke, then they began to disintegrate. They weren't just looking for the machine. They were preparing to neutralize it, to eradicate the breach. Lara knew she had to move. The workshop was her only lead, but it was about to be incinerated. Her eyes darted frantically around the foyer. Behind the veil, Isabella's mark, ... Her gaze landed on one of the dust-shrouded portraits lining the walls near the grand staircase. It was large, taller than her, completely obscured. But something about its position, directly opposite the main entrance, felt significant. It felt like a veil. Driven by a desperate hunch, she sprang from her hiding spot. The collectors, alerted by her movement, pivoted sharply. The high-pitched whine of their energy device began to rise again. Elara raced towards the portrait. Throwing her weight against the dusty sheet, it ripped away, revealing a stunning, life-sized portrait of a woman. She was beautiful, with piercing, intelligent eyes, a strong jawline, and a determined set to her mouth. Her hair was pulled back elegantly, revealing a delicate silver pendant at her throat. It was Elara Vance, Elias Thorne's mother, and on the frame, almost imperceptibly carved into the aged wood, was a small, ornate symbol, a stylized looping I intertwined with a V. Elara Vance, her mark. As the collector's energy beam began to fire towards her, Lyra's fingers traced the symbol. With a desperate shove, she pushed on the carved symbol. The entire portrait, with a groan of ancient mechanisms, began to slowly swing inward, revealing a dark, hidden passageway behind it. A secret door. Gate. The energy beam slammed into the wall where Elara had been a split second before, leaving a searing, smoking crater. The collectors were closing in. Elara didn't hesitate. With one last look at the beautiful, defiant face of Elara Vance in the portrait, she dove into the absolute darkness of the secret passage, pulling the heavy portrait door shut behind her just as the collector's footsteps pounded into the foyer. She was in Elias Thorne's gate, with no idea where it led, but knowing that the unseen legacy had just thrust her into a desperate, terrifying race against time itself. Darkness enveloped Elara as the hidden portrait door swung shut behind her, sealing her off from the blinding light and the chilling presence of the collectors. The thud of the closing mechanism was heavy, definitive. She was plunged into an absolute, suffocating blackness. The roar of the rotors outside now a distant, muffled tremor. The air was cold, damp, and still. Her phone, still clutched in her hand, was her only source of light. She fumbled with it, turning the flashlight back on. Up. The beam revealed a narrow, descending stone staircase, its steps uneven and slick with moisture. The walls were rough-hewn stone, dripping faintly in places. This was no ordinary hidden passage. It felt ancient, almost like a dungeon. The gate, Elias's whisper, echoed in her mind. It was more than a mere escape route. Elara started down the steps cautiously, one hand brushing against the cold, rough wall for balance. The silence here was different from the main house, not the expectant quiet of a secret, but the deep, heavy stillness of something long abandoned and undisturbed. Our footsteps, despite her care, echoed eerily in the confined space. As she descended deeper, the stone walls began to change. The rough-hewn rock gave way to smooth-fitted blocks, then two sections lined with polished, dark metal panels. Pipes, some gleaming, some oxidized, snaked along the ceiling and walls, crisscrossing in complex patterns. The air grew colder, and a faint, rhythmic clicking sound, like a large clock or a distant pump, began to resonate from below. The passage opened into a long, narrow tunnel. Elara shone her light forward. The tunnel stretched on, seemingly endless, its metallic walls punctuated by recessed alcoves, and in each alcove stood a peculiar dormant machine. They varied in size and complexity, some resembling large, ornate, clockwork mechanisms, others more like bizarre, intricate scientific instruments, glowing faintly with an internal, almost bioluminescent light. This wasn't just a hidden passage. It was a sublevel laboratory, or perhaps a private museum of Elias Thorne's earlier, more experimental works. The clicking sound grew louder, accompanied by a low, consistent whir. The air was now thick with the scent of ozone and something akin to burned sugar. Elara's archivist's mind, despite the terrifying circumstances, couldn't help but feel a surge of intellectual fascination. This was history, tangible and deeply personal, laid bare. She reached out to touch one of the smaller machines, a cylindrical device with numerous glass tubes. Its surface was cold, smooth, and oddly inviting. Suddenly, a panel on the wall near one of the machines hissed open. Elara flinched, jumping back, her flashlight beam snapping towards the sound. From the opening, a small metallic arm extended, its multi-jointed fingers holding a single folded piece of parchment. It was undeniably automated, a mechanism long dormant, now activated by her presence. With trembling hands, Elara took the parchment. It was another note from Elias Thorne, scrawled with the same urgent hand as the last. If you've reached this far, Elara, then you are truly my heir. This passage, the Labyrinth of Chronos, holds the remnants of my early triumphs and failures. They are all linked, pieces of the greater weave, the collectors. They seek to dismantle the weave, to ensure time's unyielding linearity. They are not evil, merely absolute. They believe my work threatens existence itself. But they are wrong. Time is not a line, but a tapestry. And Isabella, your ancestor, my mother. She understood. She believed in the beauty of its potential. She hid the true heart of my work, the Chronos key, within this very labyrinth. Not the watch that is a mere guide. The key. It allows selective manipulation. Find it, and find the proof. Proof of Thomas Vance's true role. Not merely a destroyer, but a willing pawn, manipulated by the collectors themselves. Elara's blood ran cold. Thomas Vance, her great-grandfather, a pawn of the collectors. The idea was almost more shocking than the time travel itself. It wasn't just a family dispute. It was a deeper conspiracy, a clash between the custodians of time and a genius who dared to defy them. The rhythmic clicking in the tunnel intensified, speeding up. The faint hum of the large Chronos weave machine from the lab above seemed to reverberate down into the labyrinth, causing the metal walls around her to hum faintly. And then, from the far end of the tunnel, just beyond the last illuminated machine, Elara heard it, a faint metallic scrape, followed by the familiar, soft, almost inaudible WHIR of the collector's scanning devices. They had found the hidden passage. They were following her. Elara glanced back at the open panel where the metallic arm had emerged. Perhaps there was more. She had to keep moving, to find this Chronos key and the proof Elias spoke of. Before the collectors closed in and erased not just Elias's legacy, but her own terrifying new reality. The labyrinth was not just a path. It was a race against time. The rhythmic whir scrape of the collector's devices grew louder, echoing eerily in the metallic confines of the labyrinth of Chronos. Elara knew they were methodical, relentless. Her time was running out. She had to find the Chronos key and the proof Elias spoke of, proof that Thomas Vance, her great-grandfather, was a pawn in their temporal game. She moved quickly, her flashlight beam dancing across the dormant machines in their alcoves. Each one seemed to whisper secrets of forgotten experiments, of time stretched and twisted. She scanned the walls, the floor, searching for any symbol, any hidden compartment that might indicate Isabella's mark or a concealed key. The clicking of the labyrinth's internal mechanisms. Previously a low hum, now intensified, almost as if the tunnel itself was coming alive, responding to the urgency. Elara noticed small, almost imperceptible grooves in the metal floor, forming intricate patterns that seemed to connect the various machines. She paused at a particularly large alcove, dominated by a towering spherical device made of polished brass and gleaming copper. Its surface was etched with what looked like a celestial map, stars and constellations swirling around a central point. It radiated a faint, cold energy that prickled her skin. This felt important. This felt like a focal point. Her eyes frantically searched the device. Isabella's mark, Elias had said. She ran her hand over the cold metal, her fingers tracing the etched lines of the celestial map. And there it was, nestled subtly within a cluster of engraved stars, a tiny, elegant symbol, the looping eye intertwined with a V. Identical to the one on Isabella's portrait frame. As her finger brushed the symbol, a section of the brass sphere slid inward with a soft hiss. Revealed within was a small velvet-lined compartment, and resting inside, gleaming with an inner light, was not a key in the traditional sense, but a magnificent hourglass. It was unlike any hourglass Elara had ever seen. Its glass was impossibly clear, filled not with sand, but with a swirling, incandescent dust that pulsed with the same ethereal blue light as the Chronos weave. Its frame was wrought from a dark obsidian-like metal, intricately carved with symbols that seemed to shift and shimmer before her eyes. This was the Chronos key. It radiated power, an ancient, terrifying authority over time itself. Elara hesitated. Elias had said it aloud, selective manipulation. What did that truly mean? It be used to undo the past, to prevent Lily May's death, to expose Thomas Vance's betrayal. The possibilities were overwhelming. Seductive. Suddenly, a harsh, metallic voice boomed from directly behind her, reverberating through the tunnel. Temporal anomaly located. Subject identified as descendant of anomaly generator Elias Thorne. Cease all activity. Prepare for neutralization. Elara spun around. Standing just meters away, their visors glowing menacingly in the dim light of the tunnel, were two collectors. They were taller than she remembered, their movements unnervingly silent. The air around them seemed to shimmer with distorted light, a subtle ripple in the Chronos weave itself. One of them raised an arm, its energy device already extending. There was no time. Elara snatched the hourglass, clutching it to her chest. Her eyes darted around the alcove, desperately seeking the proof. Elias had said it was linked to Thomas Vance's role as a pawn. Her gaze fell on the base of the towering spherical machine where she'd found the key. There, recessed into the obsidian frame, was a small, almost invisible slot, a perfect fit for the pocket watch she still carried. It was a leap of faith, a desperate, illogical act. With a final surge of adrenaline, Elara jammed the pocket watch into the slot. As it clicked into place, the entire spherical machine hummed to life, its celestial etchings glowing brightly. And then, from a hidden projector lens at its base, a single flickering image appeared, projected onto the stone wall of the alcove. It was a recording, an old, grainy, sepia-toned image, but clear enough to be unmistakable. It showed Thomas Vance, her great-grandfather, younger and full of a cold, calculating authority. He was not alone. Standing beside him, almost indistinguishable from the shadows, were two figures in sleek, dark suits. The collectors. The scene was a dimly lit study. Thomas Vance was speaking. His voice, though crackling with age, was chillingly audible. Through the projection, amplified by Elias Thorne's advanced acoustics. The Chronos weave is an abomination. Agent? My nephew's delusion. It threatens the integrity of reality. I will assist you in its eradication. I will lead you to his hidden laboratories. In exchange, you ensure my family name, my legacy of order and stability remains untainted by his madness. And you ensure the other matter concerning Isabella remains buried permanently. The other matter, Isabella's sacrifice. Thomas Vance had not just dismissed Elias. He had actively betrayed his own sister and nephew to the collectors. For the sake of his reputation and a twisted sense of order, he was a willing collaborator, directly responsible for Isabella's disappearance and Elias's lifelong persecution. The proof, the brutal, undeniable truth. The collectors behind Elara were closing in. Their energy beam was charging, emitting a high-pitched, deadly whine. Elara stared at the projected image of her great-grandfather, a man she had only known as a pillar of the family, revealed as a chilling betrayer. The unseen legacy was not just a fortune or an invention. It was a devastating truth, a generational conflict, and a moral reckoning. Clutching the Chronos Keitha, hourglass, she knew she couldn't simply let this truth vanish. Elias wanted it brought to light. Isabella sacrificed everything for it. With the collector's energy beam about to fire, Elara made a choice that would either doom her or forever change the fabric of her own, and perhaps the world's reality. The high-pitched whine of the collector's energy device reached a crescendo, a sound that vibrated through Elara's very teeth. The air crackled with a palpable tension, and the cold, unyielding faces behind the glowing visors of the collectors loomed closer. They were mere feet away, their intent clear: neutralization. The projected image of Thomas Vance, stark and damning, flickered on the wall. A silent testament to the very betrayal Elara now held proof of. With no time left, driven purely by instinct, and a desperate plea from a ghost. Elara clutched the obsidian-framed hourglass. The Chronos Keond instinctively twisted its central pivot. The swirling blue dust within the glass intensified, glowing with an internal, vibrant light. A sudden dizzying sensation overwhelmed her, a feeling like falling and being pulled in 1,000 directions at once. The tunnel, the collectors, the glowing projection all stretched, warped, and then dissolved into a blinding white flash. She felt a wrenching jolt, a disorienting lurch that stole her breath. The next sensation was a familiar, cool, dry air. Her feet were on a solid, familiar floor, not the damp stone of the labyrinth. The metallic tang of ozone and old machinery was replaced by the scent of aged paper and lemon polish. When her vision cleared, Elara found herself standing in the main foyer of Thornwood Manor. But it was not the dilapidated ruin she had known. The dust was gone. The furniture, previously shrouded, was uncovered and gleaming. Vibrant tapestries adorned the walls, and the grand staircase shone with a rich, polished luster. Natural light streamed through sparkling windows, illuminating every detail. The Chronos Weave apparatus was no longer a silent, covered mystery in the laboratory. Through an open archway, Elara could see it in its full glory. Not humming with frantic energy, but glowing with a soft, steady pulse. Integrated seamlessly into a grand, high-ceilinged room filled with other intricate, working mechanisms. This wasn't just Thornwood Manor. This was Thornwood Manor as it once was, in its prime. Ilara's head spun. She looked down at the Chronos key in her hand. The blue dust within had settled, its light now a faint glimmer. Elias's words echoed, not to rewind, but to glimpse. This wasn't a journey through time, not truly. It was a projection, a brief, immersive echo of the past, brought to life through the weave. She had triggered a temporal ripple, a momentary connection to a different moment in the manor's history. The sounds of the collectors, their angry shouts and the crackle of their weapons were now distant and muffled, as if separated by a thick, invisible barrier. They were in the other reality, the reality she had left behind moments ago. She was in a temporal bubble, a ghost in a vibrant past. Her eyes darted to the grand portrait of Elara Vance, now pristine and breathtakingly real. Isabella's eyes, intelligent and knowing, seemed to follow her. The carved eye intertwined, with a V on the frame glowed faintly. From the adjacent, now active laboratory, Elara heard voices. A woman's laugh, light and melodious, followed by a deeper, earnest male voice. Curiosity, stronger than her lingering fear, pulled her towards them. This was a chance to see Elias and Isabella as they truly were, to understand the brilliance and the betrayal firsthand. She crept to the archway, peering into the active laboratory. Elias Thorne, younger, his eyes alight with passion, was adjusting a dial on a smaller, worry device. And beside him, her face radiant with a mix of awe and concern, was Elara Vance, her great-aunt, alive and vibrant, just as Elias's journal had described her. She was far more beautiful and spirited than any dusty portrait could convey. Elias, are you certain? This chronometer, it is powerful. It scares me, the way it resonates with the very air. Isabella's voice, clear and melodious, reached Elias's ears. Elias chuckled, a sound of pure, unbridled excitement. Fear not, dear sister. It is merely a step, a crucial step to seeing the full tapestry. The Chronos weave is real, Bella. We are but threads within it. And soon we shall be able to glimpse any part of it, any moment. Elara watched, a silent observer as her ancestors, brilliant and hopeful, discussed their impossible science. This was the world Elias Thorne had fought to protect, the future he wanted his heir to understand. But the temporal bubble was fragile. The edges of her vision began to waver, threatening to pull her back to the grim present, to the waiting collectors. She knew she had mere moments left to learn what she could, to understand the true depth of the unseen legacy. The temporal echo, vibrant and alive, pulsed around Elara. She felt like a phantom, walking through the living past, unseen, unheard, yet terrifyingly present. The air in the revived laboratory hummed with the energy of active machines, the scent of fresh oil, and something akin to electricity. Oh, this was the heart of Elias Thorne's genius. The place where the impossible became real. Elara watched Isabella and Elias. They were a study in contrasts. Elias, consumed by the mechanics of his cue. Elias, consumed by the mechanics of his impossible creations. His eyes blazing with an almost manic intensity. Isabella, thoughtful and intuitive, observing him with a blend of admiration and deep-seated apprehension. Their bond was evident, a deep, shared passion for understanding the world. Even if their approaches differed, the collectors are a myth. Elias, Isabella said, her voice laced with a gentle frustration. Tales told to scare children. My sources confirm Thomas is merely trying to protect his business interests, not some grand linear timeline. He sees your innovations as a threat to his established order. Elias scoffed, turning from his apparatus. You are naive, Bella. Thomas is a fool, yes, but he is merely a tool. The true power he serves, it exists. They have been watching. They abhor change. They believe themselves the custodians of time, ensuring no single thread unravels the tapestry too much. Elara's mind reeled. This was before the full betrayal, before Isabella's sacrifice. Elias was already aware of the collectors, but Isabella, driven by familial loyalty or perhaps a more grounded skepticism, dismissed them as a tool of Thomas. The complexity of the family dynamic entwined with this cosmic conflict was staggering. Isabella walked over to a large corkboard covered with diagrams, some of which Elara recognized from the dust-laden workshop she had just left. She pointed to a complex drawing of interconnected lines and circles. Ah! This Chronos weave you speak of, Elias. If it is truly the fabric of existence, then altering one thread, even a small one, could have catastrophic consequences. What if you try to undo a wrong and create a greater one? Elias turned, his expression serious. That is the risk, Bella, but also the potential to correct injustice, to reclaim lost opportunity. Thomas will never understand. He is blind to the possibilities beyond his ledgers. He believes in brute force and suppression. He is already laying the groundwork for his solution to my work, gathering his allies. He paused, a flicker of pain crossing his face. He has even used our family's good name, our lineage, to gain access to certain resources. Oh, he seeks a final confrontation. He intends to use the very energy I harness against me. He calls it a purification, and he will not hesitate to implicate you, Isabella, if it means securing his desired outcome. Elara watched as Isabella's face hardened. The realization of her brother's true intentions, his willingness to betray his own blood for control, slowly dawned on her. This wasn't just about protecting Ilias's work. It was about protecting her brother from himself and protecting their shared legacy. The air around Elara shimmered, and the edges of the temporal bubble began to distort. The vivid colors of the past started to desaturate, bleeding back towards the monochrome of the present. The hum of the active machines grew faint, replaced by the distant, angry shouts of the collectors. The Chronos key was pulling her back. Remember, Elara, Isabella's voice, a ghostly echo now, seemed to speak directly into her mind, cutting through the fading vision. The weave offers not a redo, but a redirect. True change comes not from erasing the past, but from understanding its echoes and weaving a new thread into the future. The image of Isabella and Elias faded completely, replaced by the familiar, decaying walls of Thornwood Manor, the oppressive dust, the chilling cold, and the immediate, terrifying proximity of the collectors slammed back into Elara's senses. The labyrinth of Chronos was again a silent, abandoned tunnel. But the words Isabella's warning and Elias's instructions remained vibrant in her mind. She held the Chronos key, its light now, a steady internal pulse, a silent promise. The glimpse into the past had given her not only answers, but a new purpose. The sudden, jarring return to her own time left Elara disoriented, her head spinning, with the impossible revelations of the temporal echo. The collector's menacing presence, however, was very real. Their synchronized footsteps thudded closer down the metallic tunnel. Their voices, distorted and metallic through their helmets, now clearly audible. Target acquired. Keyed's temporal signature. Proceed with neutralization. Elara clutched the Chronos Keitha, hourglass tightly. Elias's journal lay abandoned where she'd dropped it earlier, forgotten in the chaos. The image of Thomas Vance collaborating with the collectors, projected moments ago, was burned into her mind. The proof, it was concrete. How could she use it? And what did Isabella mean by not a redo, but a redirect? She glanced back at the spherical machine, the source of the projection. It was still active, humming with a soft, steady energy, but the image of Thomas Vance had vanished. The collectors would reach it in seconds. They would destroy it, eradicate all evidence. A new understanding dawned on Elara. Elias hadn't just created a time viewer. He had created a tool for selective manipulation. And Isabella's words, weaving a new thread into the future, whispered of a different kind of power. Not to erase the past, but to influence the present based on the past's. Understanding, her eyes darted around the labyrinth. The metallic walls, the dormant machines, each a piece of Elias's genius. She focused on the Chronos key, its inner light beckoning. If it could show her a glimpse, could it show her a pathway? The collectors were closer now, their visors glowing. Through the dimness, Elara could almost feel the cold, sterile air they carried. She saw their shadows lengthen on the tunnel floor. "Stop," Lara yelled, her voice echoing weakly in the tunnel. It was a desperate, foolish plea, but she needed to buy time. Even a fraction of a second. The collectors paused, their movements freezing with an unsettling precision. Their glowing visors turned towards her, silent, analytical. They were clearly surprised she was still alive, and that she had chosen to speak. Temporal anomaly. Surrender and comply. Your deviation will be reintegrated, one of them stated, its voice flat, synthesized. Elara took a deep breath, clutching the chrono's key. "You're wrong," she said, her voice gaining strength, fueled by the conviction of the truth she now held. Elias Thorne wasn't an anomaly. He was a visionary. And Thomas Vance didn't just correct him, he betrayed him. He betrayed his own sister, Isabella. He brought you here. She raised the chronos key. You talk about maintaining the prime timeline. But your own agents, a century ago, tampered with it. Thomas Vance, my great-grandfather, a pillar of your order, collaborated with you to erase a truth, to bury a legitimate innovation. He was a pawn, willing to sacrifice his family to protect his reputation. The collectors remained impassive, but there was a subtle flicker in their visors, a momentary processing delay. The integrity of the weave must be maintained, the synthetic voice repeated, devoid of emotion. Your claims are irrelevant to the protocol. They're not irrelevant, Elara retorted, her mind racing, drawing on every piece of Elias's notes. Every whisper from Isabella. The weave isn't a single line. It's a tapestry, and you're tearing holes in it by trying to enforce a rigid, false past. Isabella knew. Elias knew. This is a fork in time. A chance to correct your own error, to weave a new thread not of eradication, but of truth. As she spoke, she noticed a subtle change in the glowing dust within the chronos key. It swirled faster, its light intensifying. It was reacting to her words, to her conviction. A new path, a subtle shimmering, began to appear on the metallic floor in front of her, connecting to one of the dormant machines in an alcove nearby, a machine she had overlooked, partially hidden behind a pillar. It was Elias Thorne's true gate now. The collectors began to advance again, their energy device powering up. Final warning. Compliance or neutralization. Elara didn't wait. With a desperate prayer to the ghosts of Elias and Isabella, she leaped onto the shimmering path, clutching the chronos key. The path pulsed beneath her feet, guiding her towards the new activated machine. This wasn't about running anymore. This was about choosing a different future, about ensuring Elias Thorne's true legacy. And Isabella Vance's sacrifice would not be forgotten. The game had changed. Kay and Elara, the quiet archivist, was now a player in the grand unseen tapestry of time. The shimmering path on the floor consumed Elara in a flash of blue light, pulling her into the heart of the dormant machine. The collector's energy beam fired, scorching the metallic wall where she had been just a split second before, leaving a smoking crater. Their synthetic voices registered surprise, then a cold determination. Temporal shift detected. Subject evaded neutralization, recalibrating pursuit. Elara felt another disorienting lurch, a sensation less violent than her previous glimpse, but more profound. She wasn't in a past echo. She was in an in-between space. Her surroundings were not solid stone or metal, but a swirling, translucent blue-white mist. Elias Thorne's voice, clear and resonant, echoed not from the air, but from within her own mind like a direct thought. You made it, Elara. The Chronos key recognized you. This is the interstitial space, the pathways between the threads of the weave, a place of potential, of choice. It exists outside linear time, a refuge from the collector's rigid reality. Elara tried to speak, but no sound escaped her lips. She felt weightless, adrift. She could see shimmering, almost ghost-like lines of light drifting through the mist, faint ethereal strands stretching into infinity. Were these the threads of time Elias spoke of? Each thread is a moment, a possibility, a destiny. Elias's voice continued, a guide in this impossible realm. The collectors seek to maintain only one, the prime thread, silencing all others. They believe deviation leads to chaos. But chaos is also creation. Elara remembered the projected image of Thomas Vance, his chilling collaboration with the collectors to purify the timeline, to ensure his own order. She understood now. Her great-grandfather wasn't just a pawnbroker. He was an ideologue, a believer in their rigid control. You carry the blood of both sides, Elara, Elias's voice resonated, tinged with a profound sadness. The Vance's pragmatism and Isabella's rebellious brilliance. The Chronos key allows you to navigate these threads, to understand their interconnections. It offers a unique power to reveal suppressed truths, to illuminate the hidden paths of destiny. Not to change history directly, for that invites catastrophic repercussions, but to expose the true nature of events, allowing new threads to form in the present. The mist around her began to swirl faster, and the shimmering threads grew more distinct. Some glowed brightly, pulsing with vibrant energy. Others were dim, almost faded, as if their potential had been stifled. She saw a particularly dull thread, stretching out before her, leading towards a faint, distant point of light. It felt familiar. It felt like her own life. Your thread, Elara, has been subtly manipulated, its true potential dampened by the weight of a century-old secret. Thomas and the collectors ensured that no ripple from Isabella's sacrifice, no echo of my work, would reach your timeline. They sought to create a pure lineage, free from the madness of the thorns. Elara felt a pang of anger. Her entire life, her carefully ordered existence, had been a consequence of this cosmic censorship. Her parents' quiet, unassuming lives, her own precise nature, were they all just side effects of a temporal suppression? The gate you entered, Elias explained, was designed to bring you here, to the heart of the weave, once the chronometer was reactivated. Only a direct descendant, untainted by the collector's influence, could fully awaken it. You are the key, Elara. You are the only one who can truly reveal the unseen legacy. A new objective solidified in Elara's mind. Wasn't just fleeing. She was here to fight. not with violence, but with truth. She had to expose the collector's manipulation, to reveal Thomas Vance's true role, and to honor Isabella's sacrifice by bringing Elias's vision into the light. The collector's voices, though still distant, became clearer, a chilling reminder of the pursuit. Temporal signature relocating. Anticipate subject trajectory. Prepare for re-engagement. They were adapting, tracking her even within this impossible space. Elara knew her time in the interstitial space was limited. She had to choose a path and emerge, guided by Ilias's disembodied voice and an innate sense of purpose. Elara began to navigate the interstitial space. She felt the Chronos Ketha hourglass pulsing gently in her hand, compass in this realm of pure potential. The shimmering threads of time flowed around her, some thick and vibrant, others thin and fragile. She focused on the faint, dull thread that represented her own timeline, feeling a pull towards a specific point within it. The collectors are adept at suppressing specific temporal echoes, Elias explained, his voice a calm presence in her mind. They do not erase events entirely, for that risks unraveling the entire weave. Instead, they dampen, they obfuscate, they rewrite the prevailing narrative. Your family's forgotten connections, the true nature of Isabella's sacrifice. These were deliberately faded from your timeline. A stolen memory to preserve their version of order. Elara felt a surge of cold fury. Stolen memory. It wasn't just a secret. It was a deliberate act of historical revision. Her whole life had been lived under a carefully crafted illusion. She needed to understand how they did it, and what the proof Elias had stored truly revealed about Thomas Vance's complicity. She focused the Chronos key on her own thread, feeling a gentle vibration. The mist around her began to swirl and coalesce, forming vague, indistinct shapes. She was being pulled towards a specific event within her own timeline. A moment where the suppression might have occurred, or where a crucial piece of information was removed. The swirling mist solidified, and Elara found herself standing in what appeared to be her great-grandmother's study. The room was familiar from old photographs, filled with heavy, dark wood furniture and shelves overflowing with books. But the air was thick with tension, and the lighting was dim. As if the room itself was holding its breath, a younger Thomas Vance, perhaps in his late 30s or early 40s, stood by a large globe. His back to Elara, he was arguing heatedly, his voice low and sharp, with a man Elara didn't recognize, a tall, gaunt figure in a dark, nondescript suit. Beside the stranger, barely visible in the shadows, stood another figure, helmeted, a collector. The lineage must be cleansed, Mr. Vance, the stranger said, his voice cold and precise. Not unlike the synthesized voices of the collectors Elara had just faced. The thorn deviation has been quarantined. But the link to Isabella Vance's immediate descendants must be severed. The family memory of her and her son's madness must be systematically faded. No direct records, no whispers. It is for the greater stability of your timeline. Thomas Vance turned, his face etched with a complex mix of ambition and unease. And my family's prosperity is guaranteed. My position as a pillar of society, untainted by this regrettable association. Guaranteed. the stranger confirmed, a chilling finality in his tone. Provided you cooperate fully. Provide us with access to all relevant family records, all personal correspondence. We will ensure the unwanted threads are carefully rewoven out of common knowledge. Your descendants will inherit only the prime narrative you desire. Elara watched in horror as her great-grandfather, a figure she had been taught to respect, nodded slowly, a faint, almost imperceptible smile of self-satisfaction touching his lips. He was not merely a pawn. He was an active participant, a willing co-conspirator, bartering away his own family's truth for personal gain and social standing. The proof Elias spoke of was not just Thomas's involvement, but his chilling complicity. The scene began to flicker, the edges of the room blurring as the temporal echo destabilized. Elara knew she was running out of time. The collectors in the present were gaining on her. She had seen enough. The Chronos key pulsed, urging her towards a new destination, a place where she could use this devastating knowledge.